Hello, welcome to another Rust WebAssembly Working Group meeting. We don't have any new RFCs today, just jumping right into the schedule. We probably should make a little bit of progress on the NPM packages RFC. I think that's stalled a bit. That's just kind of a note to self. And then I think also maybe it makes sense to close or like decide not to do the trait inheritance RFC and then write up a new deref RFC instead. I can probably move to do that later today. All right. And I don't think there's any new issues tagged for the release candidate. Shit. Double check. Sort by newest. Yep, nope, nothing new. All right, so without any further ado, let's jump into 2018 goal status updates. So the big news for WebAssembly stuff is that we published WebSys.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you didn't see the announcement blog post, check out the Rust WebAssembly blog. Yeah, and then I guess there were a couple of things that just the act of publishing ended up uncovering. One, how bad publishing all the WASM bindgen crates still is. Two, there's a bunch of no interface object stuff that the format of our warnings was different, and so it didn't get caught by the analysis and audit that I did before and kind of the bash scripting. So there's like 70 something interfaces that are marked no interface object and we don't expose at all. And I think the best thing to do here is to just consider them structural, because what no interface object means is that basically like the constructor and its prototype aren't visible like through the window. The only way to get at them is to like have an actual instance and then ask for the prototype and then like ask for the prototype's constructor. So since we can't really make like ahead of time bindings, I think it just makes sense to just consider them purely structural.
Do you think this will be a breaking change, or you just think it'll be just throw it in and add more APIs?
Yeah, this is additive because we're just skipping them completely right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so that was the one thing. And then the other was audio context on WebAssembly or on WebKit has a prefix. And we haven't really talked about how to deal with like prefixes at all yet.
But what are prefixes?
Yeah, so on WebKit, it's not called like audio context. It's called WebKit audio context. And so I don't know if the best way to handle that is like to make feature detection better in WebSys, or to try and like add custom attributes to WASM bindgen for us to kind of do it in the bindings so that everyone else can just use audio context.
Can we just use some polyfills to make sure that it works rather than working that for the core?
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying. There's a lot of background noise.
Yep. Okay. Now is it fine? Or no?
It's a little bit better.
Okay. Just give me a minute.
Well, I think I got you. You was talking about polyfilling, right? Why couldn't we just polyfill it?
I mean, so this isn't quite as drastic as like including a polyfill. It's the exact same API. It just happens to have a different name. And like the way that people do this in JavaScript is they say like audio context equals like WebKit audio context or audio context.
Yeah.
And I guess my question is, do we want people to write the equivalent of that in Rust? Or do we want to have WASM bindgen automatically do that kind of dance in the generated bindings?
I mean, the thing is that you are already using WASM bindgen as some sort of interoperability layer. So I wouldn't expect to write this kind of logic. I would expect the generated code to handle that for me.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we should have like some sort of whitelist in the build script saying that like extend the AST for WASM bindgen a little bit more to say like you can check these names as well, and basically just generate exactly that code by saying audio context equals WebKit audio context or that, and we just somehow plumb it in the generated bindings.
Yeah. Do you think? So I think it makes sense to have. Like I'm wondering what the UI would be. And I think like it would make sense to have our own custom extended attribute in the WebIDL where we can just say like I don't know, polyfill test or whatever, feature detect equals WebKit audio context, and then probably a similar like WASM bindgen attribute for people writing bindings by hand.
Yeah, something similar like that, where we just say like alternative. This is alternatively named this, and then you just blanket use that or the other one, depending on what the context is. And then we could optimize the bindings a little bit to only do the if statement one or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. The downside is that now we have to maintain all of these and like find all of these, which kind of is crappy. But I guess if we do a good job, that's nice for users.
I think it's fine in the sense that like I don't think we should seek them out, but rather if people open issues and we just add another whitelist as it comes up. And otherwise, it seems like everything should like in the expanse of time reach what Firefox WebIDL, which we used, is actually saying. And so like eventually, even in Safari, it'll be renamed audio context, and we won't even need this. Like that. So it's like in that sense, I'm not too worried about the cost long term of this kind of strategy.
Mm. Okay, and then the final issue that came up, I believe, was Internet Explorer doesn't have text decoder at all.
Yeah.
And even when that's polyfilled, it seems some of the examples don't run. Sorry, not Internet Explorer, MS Edge.
I actually posted the issue in the agenda. I was actually wondering how much does WASM bindgen rely on that? Because you use it for string, I guess it needs to be here, right?
Yeah, basically nothing works because, we use it for string, both passing to WASM and pulling out from WASM. And we just unconditionally assume that if you're in a browser, it is available. Or like if you're not in Node, it is available.
Yeah. And what's frustrating here is that this is not like, so this is the whole polyfill case, right? It's not just like a different name for the same interface.
Yeah.
So we really don't want to include this code, this like polyfill code for non MS Edge browsers. So I think we have to rely on like bundler configurations and like whatever when people build this stuff. Like this is not something we want to include by default.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is not a unique issue. The Rust WASM team has. In every JavaScript project, you have this kind of issues, and usually the bundler will deal with that. Yeah. So you could just emit an import statement or a require statement, and just leave it like this.
That is what we do with CommonJS. With like browser code, it's on the global scope, so there's no require, which makes it a little harder. But I think at minimum, I guess we need to document like how to do this, or like pointers to how to do this, I guess.
Yeah, I remember that I've used a library called text encoding, which you can use in MSH, and it works. So probably we can use that.
So is Sven, can you clarify do we need to do anything to hint to Webpack that we are using text decoder, and if you're targeting Edge, a polyfill is required, or is our current code generation already flagging that appropriately?
So the thing is, as Nick mentioned, since you are just calling out the global object, the bundler won't notice any require statement or stuff like that. So you won't know anything about it. But usually what you do is include a polyfill before that bundle actually loads, and conventionally.
So the idea is that most of the time you actually have like an import statement or require statement, like an import ES6 statement, and then that turns into a no-op if you you don't actually target Edge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw there's something in the Babel community called Babel-preset-env. I don't know if you have already seen this.
Not yet, no.
Okay. So basically, in the Babel configuration, you can specify a target, which is either a browser like Safari 7 or Edge 11, something like that. And Babel will actually scan your code, searching for incompatibilities in your API that you're using. And for example, if you use text decoder, and it isn't defined on the target you specified, it will pull in a polyfill and just polyfill your code for you. And if you don't target Edge, it will just omit it because it will assume that the target has it already. And
so that specifically only works though with import. Like the scanning your code is like you have to have an import statement for it. You have to have like an ES6 import to be polyfilled.
No, you don't need that. It will actually look at the usages. Like this will probably work, I guess, because if wasn't bindgen emits the JavaScript bundle, and then you pass it to Babel and Webpack, Babel will actually scan the generated code for incompatibilities in the API and just polyfill them for you. So I guess with a little more testing, I think this will work.
I think that should work.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I definitely agree with Nick. We should have caveats and instructions for like, if you want support on all browsers, make sure you configure your bundlers to do this, or like run this Babel pass to do this. Mm-hmm. But the only other question for me would be, we do somewhat support, like the no modules case where you're not using a bundler is like somewhat largish in the Rust community. And so I don't know if we want to go out of our way to just say like, this doesn't work in Edge, please use a bundler if you want that to work. Or do we want to have a polyfill for that? I feel like we should just say it doesn't work, but just have a caveat saying like no modules doesn't work in Edge.
Yeah, I mean, if you're targeting Node.js and you have an incompatibility in the API, it's kind of awkward to say just bundle your code because there's no need to bundle it on Node.js. So I think it's, as you mentioned, it's a bigger issue than that.
Oh, so you think we should like have some sort of polyfill for the no modules case?
If you're targeting for Node.js, I don't think you need a polyfill, and you have to anyhow support it because you have only one JavaScript engine there.
I mean, in that specific case, yes, but there are a few specific web platform API like window.fetch that you don't have on Node.js. And in that case, if you don't bundle your code, there's no way you would have a polyfill in it.
If I understand it correctly, we already doing that now, right? So we have that thing specifically for a Node.js generation and for a web browser generation. So I think we have that now already.
It is the case that we're not attempting to polyfill things for Node. Or for Node, we're just assuming you have some sort of base minimum version, and like there's a text decoder in some version of Node. And if you use web APIs, like anything from WebSys, basically nothing will work, and we're not going to try and get that working on Node.js specifically at all.
Yes, I think so.
So for the no modules use case, I think what we can do is we can just give people a little snippet pointing to an existing, or that uses an existing polyfill, and just does, like, you put this script right above your main script, and it just says if like window.text encoder decoder does not exist, then it creates its own little script node that points to the polyfill, and it inserts it in the document synchronously, right, like during load time before the next script runs.
Yeah.
And like, that's not great, but like, it's good enough. And if you actually care about that, then like, you're well on the way towards like being in a custom world anyway, right?
Yeah, I agree. And but this should be documented in order to know what to polyfill, right?
Yeah.
And I guess if this annoys users enough to actually do something about it, we could think about it more later.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so document if you're using a bundler, you have to worry about polyfills, and this is what you should do, like basically the whole transformation. And if you're not using a bundler with no modules, document saying like, here's a drop-in replacement, like some existing something somewhere else. And both of these documentations would probably just say like, here's existing documentation for doing this, and this is like probably how you plug it into as
right. Exactly. We don't want to be like the people maintaining the how do I polyfill text, decoder encoder documentation. We want to be pointing to the people who are already documenting that.
Right.
Yep.
All right.
I don't know if you want to note that, but I will try to test the bubble thing into our existing Webpack template.
Okay. Perfect.
Cool. All right. WASM packy stuff. I can do this update, or yeah, I guess Gatozi's gone now. So we released 050 of WASMPack. So this is the one that has WASMPack build and stuff. I don't know if y'all saw that, Sven and Sindil, but can probably update the templates and everything. It's a lot faster. It has built-in headless browser testing now. Things are good. Am I missing anything? I guess it can also support targets. The way WASM bindgen says target no modules, target common.js, whatever. And then based on our discussions with Brian Turlson from TC39 and Microsoft, we've got a pretty good plan, I think, for how to generate like universal modules that work in both common.js and ES modules in the browser and everything like that. And I expect there'll be some sort of straw man coming up pretty soon once Ashley's back from Strange Loop about that. All right. Do you want to talk bundlers and templates?
I think we have a lot to talk today about that stuff.
Yeah.
Gwen, can you start?
Yeah, please.
No, I think so I've noticed that we have now a parcel plugin, right? But I couldn't look into it, so you're probably the best to talk about it.
Okay, sure. My audio is clear, right? So I can continue?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I've done with the parcel template. So actually the parcel plugin was done by Cat Sigma. GitHub username. I don't know the real name. So he has done that parcel plugin, and then I've incorporated that and created a parcel template, and I moved into Rust WebAssembly repo. Virgin, I have created two issues for you. One is for creating filling CI. Other one is for enabling depend-abort for that. I think, but more than that, it's done. So people can use that thing. That works fine. And I also enabled the CI for that. So it works fine. And the second one is for Rust Webpack template. I've enabled the CI, but I think some Rust-related dependency is getting messed up in that stuff, and that is causing CI to fail. I didn't had much of a time to look into it, but I'll take a look. So probably can someone help me with that? That would be awesome. So that is for the Rust Webpack. So you have a PR open there, and you can use it. And also I've done this generator, the thing that we have talked, human generator, for Rust WebAssembly, so you can generate application. Now currently we just have Webpack, but I will add in Bash support too. But I've just pushed into a repo so that you guys can have a look into it and then probably work with that stuff. So that is what.
Awesome. Can you link the Yeoman generator project again in the agenda?
Okay, I'll put it in the agenda. I dropped a message in the Discord in that Rust community group. I'll probably put a message in the paper also. Yeah. And yes, so coming back, there was one other issue which Sven added in the loop. Do you want to discuss this now or later?
What issue?
The web worker.
So I didn't get that. Which one?
The web worker.
Oh yes. Yes. I mean, we can discuss about that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Let's just wait till we finish the goal updates, then we'll discuss it on its own.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Great.
Okay. Any other stuff about bundlers and the templates?
That's pretty much of it. But I'm talking with other bundler groups also. Like there's one more bundler that we can support. I'm talking with them and probably get back to you.
Which one?
I forgot the name actually. I will get back to you on the name. I just had sent a mail to them. There was one more bundler that they were expressed their interest in doing this or something. So I will get back to that stuff.
Are you not talking about Rollup by any chance?
Not Rollup. I think in Rollup they still have the PR open, right? They didn't merge your PR, right?
So yeah, the complicated part in Rollup is that they are not designed to handle binary modules into the graph. So it was pretty, basically I don't have the time to finish that at the moment.
Okay.
If you don't have time to finish the PR, I think it might be helpful to maybe leave a comment in the PR saying that so that they know that they can take it over if they need to.
Yeah, I know. So I was clear with them, and they probably know that. But the thing is that just nobody wants to work on that at the moment because you basically need to rewrite a lot of pieces. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, Sandira, I'm wondering if you know the author of the Parcel plugin.
No, I don't know the author of Parcel plugin.
Okay. Because I guess it would be cool if you can join the core at some point.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah, we can talk to them.
Yeah, it seems that the Parcel guys have just no interest of making sure that WebAssembly works in Parcel.
Yeah, they're really interested in that stuff, and I think a lot of work is going on in that direction. So let's do it. Let's talk with them. Probably we can ping them and then ask them if there is interest. Probably.
So you are saying that you are already talking with them, right?
I talked with one person who I think his GitHub name is Cat Sigma, and that guy was creating a plugin for us. So I just talked with him. I didn't talk with him.
Is Cat Sigma actually part of the Parcel team? I kind of had the impression that Cat Sigma just was an individual contributor.
Yeah, I think he's an individual contributor, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have my
Parcel team. We'll talk with them. We can find somebody. Yeah.
I still have my open issue about WebAssembly being broken in Parcel itself, and they don't seem to respond to that.
Okay.
All right. So moving on to documentation. I don't think there's too much here other than I updated the tutorial for the new WASMPack release. So basically it's just saying use WASMPack build instead of WASMPack init now. And there's still to-dos to make a testing chapter now that we have smooth user experience for testing. Let's see, website debugging, everything else, I don't think there's really any updates unless someone else has updates.
But Nick, I guess for the website, I think there were some messages going on for stage 2. Was that already done, or do we need something to do for that?
I think like content-wise, we're pretty much there, and basically we need to talk with Aaron, I think, probably about I don't know, final bits of polish. But I don't think there's anything really pressing that we need to do right now.
Okay, so yeah, probably I will try to put a word to Aaron and then send a message to him or something. Let's see what happens there.
Sounds good to me. All right. Shall we talk about web worker support?
Yes.
Okay. So I first saw an issue. I don't remember where exactly, but someone was saying that WasmBindGen wasn't able to, I don't know, build for service worker, or he wasn't able to load the Wasm module into the service worker. And so, web worker, yes. So it seems there is a Webpack plugin, or it's a Webpack loader actually, but it kind of inlines your Wasm module into the bundle, which is pretty bad actually. So people cannot use this, but they can use something else. And the whole point of that is that I posted an example into the notes where someone made a clear configuration plus some code about how to load a Wasm module into the service worker. And I think it will make sense to either make a new example into the WasmBindGen repo about how to build a service worker, how to pass messages and this kind of stuff. And maybe why not create a new template or add it into an existing template to show how to load a Wasm module into a service worker.
So what is the reason why our default kind of setup won't run in a service worker? Like, what is the missing API that we rely on?
So the thing is that... Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think the problem is basically on the Webpack plugin, Webpack module, Webpack loader that they're using, and it kind of inlines the entire binary content of the Wasm file into the JavaScript file itself. So we need to do some workaround if you're using Webpack and web worker.
I found the initial issue again, and yeah, actually it's more like a Webpack issue, actually.
Okay. We should fix that then? Yeah, because I'm like, one of the kind of properties that we've had so far is that generally, like other than these things like the text encoder, decoder bit, is like, if you don't use, say, a DOM API in some Rust WASM project, then you don't rely on the DOM, and your code should be able to run in environments that don't have access to the DOM, like a worker or service worker or something like that. So it'd be nice to, continue to make that a reality.
Yep. I think one other thing that we can do for the Webpack template for a whole is that we can say people like, okay, for the web worker, you have this problem, which you can do it. You can have this workaround to make it work. And then you can put the example over there or a sample over there, and then we point that thing to people such that they can use that workaround till that bug is getting fixed in the backside.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I understand, the issue here is that there isn't actually an issue. It kind of works if you know how to do it, but it's pretty hard to know the stuff. So I think we should just making sure that documentation is good and that we have examples. But then, so I'm just wondering if it would make sense to create a new worker or service worker or web worker target into WasmBindGen, because you could have changes in the API. Like if you want to include a new, like basically the import and require statements into a worker are just calling a function called import scripts or something like that. So basically the API is different. So I think it kind of makes sense to create a new target for that.
Right, because is import script synchronous? Because that's like safe in a worker, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, and I do agree that it would be nice to have an example of just doing worker stuff and like post messaging back and forth in the WASM Bungee gut. Right, I think we're pretty close to running out of time on the Zoom meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's so weird that they don't give the person running the meeting the timer. Whatever. But it seems like we've covered everything here. Does anyone have any last minute things to talk about?
We can follow up after and touch base stuff with you stuff we can do. That's about it. There's also like a Watson hack issue that I need to look at.
Okay. I honestly didn't really catch any of that other than follow up and something about a WASM pack issue. But that sounds good to me. We can definitely communicate online.
Okay.
Okay. So thanks everyone for coming to the meeting and participating. And I wish you all a wonderful week and see you next time.
Yep.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.